Good afternoon and welcome to today's Top Tips webinar. My name is James Evely and I'm the editor of In Publishing. The format of the webinar is very straightforward. Claire will make a 20-minute presentation, which will be followed by a 10-minute Q&A. To take part in the Q&A, simply type your question into the panel in front of you at any time. I will then collate the questions and put as many of them as possible to Claire after her presentation. I won't read out the names of the people asking the questions, just the questions themselves. So, without further ado, I'd like to hand you straight over to Claire.
Thank you, James, for your introduction and to all of you for joining us today. My name's Claire and I'm from Media Systems. Just a little bit of a background about us. We're a London-based software and services company with customers both here in the UK and internationally. All of our team come from a really strong background in media and publishing, and it's this knowledge and experience that really helps us build the most productive working partnerships with our clients. Media Systems caters for absolutely every aspect of the publishing industry, as you can see from the list of solutions that we provide. There have been so many changes in the previous 25 years plus that I have been in publishing. The advent of digital, the outsourcing of IT departments, automation, just being a few. Some areas of the publishing business have benefited from the streamlining of processes, especially areas that are seen to increase revenue income. Other areas of the industry still rely heavily on manual processes, and this leads to inefficiency and poor working relationships, both internal and external. One key business area that is yet to benefit from a consistent automated workflow process is contributions. Editorial teams are increasingly being replaced or supplemented by external contributors. It is a common struggle throughout the industry to effectively manage their content, delivery, and invoicing. The management of this resource is becoming critical as the number of contributors increases. If the contributors are managed poorly, they will, like permanent members of staff, become disenfranchised with the company and potentially start submitting their stories to your competitors. For the commissioners, laborious processes, they impact heavily on their productiveness throughout the day. Does that really matter? Yes, it does, and here's why. Contributors are key to your publication's success. Losing key contributors due to poor management can impact your whole publication, from editorial to circulation and to advertising. Contributors are revenue generators, as are your permanent editorial team. They all need to be retained for your publication to be a continued success. Your team in editorial and also in finance waste their valuable time double keying everything from payment amounts to contributor data. This is not only a waste of time, but there is an increased chance of error for every link in the chain. If the email address is entered incorrectly, your contributor won't receive confirmation of receipts, or even worse, they may not receive their payment. Having no approval structure can easily lead to incorrect payments being made. Now, keying an extra zero onto your payment, I doubt your contributor will complain, but your publisher will do. This will not only cost you money, but the time taken to rectify the error cannot be recouped. If there is no structure in place, some commissioning editors will constantly be checking authorisations verbally. Currently, time is wasted authorising payments your team should be working on more productive tasks. Wasting time is demotivating. Your staff will start resenting the admin side of their role, and this negativity is contagious. It will seep through to the rest of their work. This means editorial quality will be reduced. Too much time being wasted chasing commissions, authorisations, payments. With your editorial team managing tasks that are not directly related to improving your editorial output, the editorial will suffer and readership figures will be reduced. With declining readership figures, your advertising teams will have to reduce their rates. No one wants to advertise in a production or in a publication that does not have any readers. Now, of course, from the contributor's perspective, if the process is inefficient, if they don't get paid, if stories are lost, confirmations and updates are not received, they will stop working with you. They will stop submitting their quality stories, which will again have a direct result on your editorial quality. Without good editorial, there are no readers, no advertisers, and no revenue. Let me stress, the workflows you introduce should not dominate the commissioning editors or finance team's days. The management of the contributors and their contributions can be improved by following some simple tips, which we will now take a look at. Your members of staff spend years building relationships with contributors. Having had a chat with some staff regarding the impact of GDPR, I was assured that they didn't keep contributors' details on their desk. No, they kept them all in personal notebooks on their desk or in Excel spreadsheets, and some of them, or one of them, even saved the Excel spreadsheet onto network drive that was accessible by their colleagues. But their colleagues didn't know it was there and didn't actually know they had access to it, so it doesn't really count. So tip 1 is to store contributions centrally. Let's put aside the implications of GDPR and data protection here. There have been webinars upon webinars covering the joys of GDPR, and you are fully aware that keeping personal data of contributors in the format of a book on a desk doesn't exactly comply. But here's another point. What happens when staff leave? Do they take their book with them? Do you have access to the spreadsheet on their desktop? Do you have an easily accessible record of all your company's contributors? As a publisher, we want and we need a record of the contributors, their payments, their stories. They are not an individual's property. This is just one of the reasons for storing all of your contributors and their contributions in one central location. Allowing users to see all contributors will help avoid duplicate accounts and commissions. This will save users time, no more manually entering in names and addresses onto a spreadsheet or a book on their desk. If it is possible, integrate your database with finance and editorial. This will save the users in all departments from double keying, saving time entering data and reducing the chance of errors occurring. Having a single database also allows for reporting and valuable information such as spend per publication and the value of contributors. They don't just show you what has been authorised, they can show you how many commissions are still outstanding. Year-on-year reports can help you quickly manage budgets. They can help save time and generate revenue. They are the most valuable asset of a single system. When staff are overwhelmed with work, authorising commissions, entering data, etc., the resolution is often perceived to be hire more staff. Certainly, the teams, they will say they have too much to do and more staff required. We know in this economic climate that is unfortunately unrealistic. Throwing people at your contributions problem is not only an unlikely, costly measure, but is also a very short-term solution, as the need for more people will only grow again as the increase in external contributors grows. So tip 2 is use a common workflow. So instead of throwing more staff at the issue, adopt a consistent workflow for the whole contributions process that every appropriate member of staff is aware of. The workflow should be effortlessly simple with minimal training required, and it should encourage its use and reduce the chance of errors. The most effective workflow to adopt would be one that reduces the time spent in the most frequently performed tasks. So go, chat to your team. What takes up most of their time? Each publisher will have different results. However, through our experience at MSL, there are some key steps, and many of those we'll touch on in these tips. One step of the workflow is to ensure that commissioning editors know what they can authorise. Give them defined levels which they can authorise up to. This will save time with editors check-in and give them responsibility for their own contributors and stories. How many stories are lost because the commissioning editor was off and the story was emailed to them, or the incorrect email address was entered by a contributor. If every member of the team knows where contributions are emailed to and stored at every step of the workflow, this issue will be a thing of the past. Ensure that everyone knows where to store information at each step. Use the time spent locating copy to give an editorial feedback or sourcing a relevant photograph to complement a piece. Giving team members ownership also increases their sense of worth. It helps motivation and increases job satisfaction. Having a workflow that simplifies key areas as much as possible will save a significant amount of time, perhaps enough hours to be equivalent of another member of staff joining the team. Tip 3 is to provide a clear brief. Ensure that the information to submit copy includes all of the information that the contributor will need and that it is explicit. For example, if the title is Halloween, then make sure details are given. Is this a horror story or a children's story? You don't want to waste your contributor's time with a brief that is just too brief. And I know, I appreciate it does sound like I'm stating the obvious here. However, important information is often left out of emails. So ideally, put the brief in a templated email so you have prompts as to what to include and an audit trail, which will reduce errors and misunderstandings later. Essential information would be copy deadline, title, summary of requirements, word count, publication name, payment terms, full terms and conditions, including syndication and copyright details. Having these as headings in a templated email will ensure that all of the information is included. Now, entering information onto one of these emails has been recognised as a huge time-saving improvement on the sites that we have visited. Any changes to the brief needs to be emailed to the contributor immediately. And where possible, automate this. Save your team's time and reduce the risk of errors. Now, submitting commissions should really be plain sailing. The contributor should not have to send multiple emails, and your team should not have copy in drop boxes scattered across your network. So we recommend that you use a single submission portal. Upload commissions to one central place. Ideally, then send them to a digital asset management system where they can automatically have metadata tags applied. Important point to note though, ensure your portal can accept common file formats for texts and pictures. Ideally, the portal should perform validation of content and security checks. Please, please, please make sure you don't get a virus. The logon to your system must be secure and referenced correctly. Make sure the file is uploaded to the correct contributor and their story. You do need to be aware of how GDPR legislation affects storage of personal data. Speak to your GDPR controller. Ensure that they know about the existence of your contributions database. And also ensure that you have methods in place to delete contributors from the database should they exercise their right to be removed. And I promise, that's the last time I'm mentioning GDPR. The contributor should, of course, receive confirmation of the upload and again, confirmation once the payment has been approved. This transparency enhances your relationship while reducing the time your team spends on admin. Manually sending confirmations is a drain on resources that is just not necessary. Well, we are in the communication industry. We really should know how to communicate. Nonetheless, tip 5, always stay in touch. It still needs to be emphasised. We need to communicate effectively and efficiently. Time should not be wasted because we are also in the publishing industry and we have deadlines. Ensure that all changes and receipts are acknowledged and that payments are made on time. This increased communication will limit the number of emails your team receive asking for more information. The more communications that are automated, the better. This will reduce the time your team spends dealing with contributors. It's also worth ensuring that changes to bank or contact details are confirmed. Ideally, this is automated to minimise the work for both your finance and editorial teams. Emailing commission requests to reduce the time spent speaking to the contributors. As interesting as those conversations can be, they can be very time consuming. But of course, the email will also provide all the details of the brief, which, as they are in writing, will reduce misunderstandings and again save more time. Your contribution or contributors' relationships are just so valuable. So you need to make sure the conversations you have with them are positive and productive. When commissions are uploaded, these should be done so with full visibility, so the contributor knows when their story has been received. Confirmations should also include your terms and conditions, or at least a link to them. Make sure that your contributors have full access to your terms of business. Again, this will help reduce misunderstandings in the future and save time, as your contributors will know that their story has been received and what will be happening next. Contracts encourage contributors to submit stories to you on a regular basis. When a contributor submits copy to you regularly, they build a sense of loyalty with you. They're more likely to choose to work with you in the future. Incentivize contributors to sign up by giving them easily deliver mechanisms and increased communications. Automating their monthly payments will also save your finance department time. Now, contracts are usually managed out of a system, but managing them centrally will make reporting on them easier and make them quicker and easier to use for your commissioning editors. We have found that the administration of contracts in publishing departments is a common drain on resources, whereas if they're used efficiently, they can save both time and money. With the time saved emailing efficiently, your team are going to have such more productive conversations with your contributors instead of laborious, boring, administration-driven ones. At any point in time, a business should be able to give a cost of a product, and publishing is no different, and advertising departments will testify to that. Every percentage fluctuation from budget is accounted for within advertising, and editorial should be no different. However, having manual or paper systems are notoriously inaccurate. Figures are not live and incorrect information is easily entered. Tip 6, therefore, is to keep your information consistent. With a central database, there can be data validation to ensure accuracy, and figures can be checked and reported on instantaneously. Enable your editorial department to have access to the value of contributions. Having this overview will help give them appreciation of the story. The information they have should be live, giving a totally accurate overview of the publication. Having up-to-date accurate figures for the future publications will help with forecasting and planning future budget requirements. The reports and their values will be consistent through editorial to finance, all the way through to your management information reports. Encourage commissioning editors to stay within their budgets by giving them visibility of live figures. Now, asking for financial reports from your team, they can often install dread due to the huge amounts of paperwork and cross-referencing required. But this is not going to be the case if the figures are accurate and centralised. Whenever possible, integrate the contributor database with finance. And this will save double keying of data, and at the very least have a CSV file that can be imported in. Having a single point of data entry is is the real key to keeping information or keeping incorrect information from spreading throughout the system. When changes are made to the contribution system, make sure it's reflected in the finance system. Ensure that finance know about any changes. Integrating with your finance system will ensure that payments and other communications are sent to the correct address. So have a single point of entry for that information too. We know how important good quality editorial is to the success of our publications, and quality contributors are key to this. contributors, they will not want to work with you if they feel they're let down. And this is why it's so important to keep your promises. Keeping your promises on payment and delivery will encourage contributors to submit copy to you. If they have a choice between two commissions, you want to be the publisher in receipt of the story. By sending emails and documenting agreements, errors are reduced and misunderstandings are avoided. All of these help maintain and improve a relationship. Ensure your editorial and other relevant departments are aware of any copyright agreements you have in place with the contributor. Please do not break this promise. It can be costly financially as well as having a huge impact on your ongoing business relationship. So ideally, copyright information should be stored with the rest of the contributor's details on the central system. And at all times, endeavour to do what you say you are going to do. Make dealing with your publication as straightforward and as pain-free as possible. And automation and accurate communication of information is key to building and maintaining your relationships. So to recap, we established earlier that the contributions workflow in most editorial and finance departments lacks structure. This has a financial effect, whether this is directly in errors such as overpaying contributors or through poor working relationships, leading to the loss of your valued contributors. Also, the number of hours in your editorial team spent chasing paperwork, collating figures, that impacts on the time they have to spend on more productive tasks. So we've had a look at see how these issues can be overcome. A single database. Don't have a folder on each editor's desk. It's not the most efficient way of managing your contributors. A single database will save you so much time in the long run, and it gives you a real good base to build from. A common workflow will give structure to tasks whilst ensuring that members of staff are accountable for their actions, such as authorising payments. When you commission a story, make sure commissioners know the information to ask for. If it is recorded in the commission, then you have an audit trail to work for. So even if the member of staff isn't available, the details they had requested for the story are still available on that single database. Ensure you are able to accept contributions at any time, especially when a story breaks. Make sure that your contributor knows where they're uploading the file to. If they usually send commissions to a specific person, their mailbox, and therefore their story, may not be accessible. So have a central submission portal so you can receive copy at any time. Improve your relationship with your contributors and reduce paperwork by automating confirmations and uploading contributions. This will maintain contributors' working relationship and also save your editorial team time. Use consistent information throughout the workflow process. The financial position of the publication is key, and editors must take into account full outgoings, including contributors' fees. And this can be reported on directly from the database. The figures will be accurate and quick to establish. Reports are fantastic tools that save so much time and really can help you identify how to save or even make more revenue. Finally, deliver. If you said you were going to pay a contributor at the end of the month, have processes in place that make sure this is happening. If you've said a story will be used in a publication on a specific date, ensure that updates are sent if this is going to change. Your contributors are revenue generators for your publication, and hopefully these tips will just help improve the management of the contributions and in turn help generate more revenue for your publication. So now I'll hand back to James, who hopefully has some questions.
Claire, thank you very much. A fascinating session. Yes, we do have some questions. First one,
Okay.
in your experience, what is the average time saved by using an editorial contribution system like this?
Oh, the amount of time saved, that's difficult to quantify. What we should probably do in the future, obviously, is do a real analysis before and after, a specific one. It's more about the productiveness, and it's more about how people feel in their job role. They feel more productive. They feel like they're having more of an impact in the department rather than doing the mundane administrative tasks that just seep out the enthusiasm from the editorial department. It's also the errors. The errors reduce drastically, and the time taken, they don't have to sit there working out why a contributor has been paid too much, or has it been underpaid. That just becomes a thing of the past. So it's really those sorts of timescales that really that's the huge impact.
Excellent. Okay. Should a system like this aim to completely replace the verbal relationship between editorial and contributors?
No, definitely not. What this should do is it should actually make the conversation just more productive. When you speak to your contributors, you want the story, you want them to be able to feel enthused about submitting a story to you. You want them to be able to have a really positive relationship with you. So you want to explore the story a little bit more. You want to have good discussions about it. You don't want to be answering questions like, when is my check coming, or asking information to clarify the information about a story. You want it to be very productive, and that's really what it's really key is to make your conversations more efficient and more effective as well.
Excellent, excellent. Is the editorial contributor interface in a system like this easy to use and, importantly, GDPR compliant?
First of all, within the GDPR compliance, obviously any system that is used in any process needs to ensure that the company can maintain their GDPR compliance. So yes, it should show whether, or it should allow you to, for example, remove a contributor from the system if they express their right to be removed, etc. So any system should allow that compliance. Whether the interface should be easy to use or not, absolutely. If it isn't easy to use, if it isn't intuitive and clean, then it has no place in the workflow. Any system, really, the interface should be designed either by users or by people with an awful lot of experience in the publishing industry. It should not be designed by techies, as it were. There should be a lot of user experience that's put in place, because any supplier would expect you to be sitting in front of a system for 7-8 hours a day using it, and you need people to want to do that and to be able to feel happy about sitting in front of a system, and therefore the design of it needs to be absolutely spot on.
Great, great. Another one, Claire. What are the key benefits of commissions being managed in a central location from a finance point of view?
From a finance point of view, definitely they can choose really between manual or automated payments, by having the payments being from one central location being sent then to their finance system. You can also then, of course, have two-way interfaces. So the information, any transactional information, can be sent from one central location to the finance system, and then any pertinent information can be sent back again. And that's really the key there, is the fact that you have one point of entry, either in the finance system or in the central system for any updates. One point of entry as opposed to multiple ones, which means that the risk of errors is drastically reduced. You can put in data validation as well into the system, so that the information just gets passed from one point to the other without too many links in the chain that can give errors. So it's it's the amount of reduced errors, the transference of transactional information as well.
Okay. My team are very possessive over their work and quite resistant to change. Any change to their work practices is seen as a negative. Any tips for selling changes to them?
Yeah, we have found that some teams are, they've, as I said earlier, they've spent years building up their list of contributors, and they're their contributors, aren't they? They're, and they want to keep them close to their chest. And nobody really particularly likes change. It can be quite threatening. I've found that there's usually, and in any department, when you invoke any change to any workflow, there's usually somebody in the department that is the go-to person. They're the person that everyone says, "Oh, my computer's not working," or "Oh, what form is it I need to fill in for XYZ?" Those people there are absolute font of knowledge. They can also really be, whether they mean to or not, the controller, if you like, of the negativity. You'll find that they're a big, huge influencer. So if you can get them on board, sit down, chat with them, ask them questions about what are the pain points in your workflow, how do you think you can make it better? Really, if you can get them onto the project, as it were, and ask for their input. With clever questioning technique, you can usually get their ideas, and with you can get them to perhaps come up with the ideas of a new workflow or ways to reduce the errors. And of course, once they've come up with the ideas and they're involved in the project from day one, the amount of positivity and the amount of buy-in there is it's priceless, to be perfectly honest. And they, of course, then will become the new owner of the workflow, so that they will be your point of contact and real hub of positivity as well.
Okay. How easily does a system like this integrate with existing financial systems?
Providing the financial and indeed editorial system as well, providing it has obviously an open API, then you should be able to, any supplier should be able to interface with it. You do need to make sure that your specific information is sent over. So only you need to clearly define what fields you want to be sent over from one system to the other, and then once you've got that information, because it wouldn't necessarily be every single field that you would want sent to finance, so you need to clearly define it right from day one, and anybody should, a decent supplier should be able to help you to do that. The key thing is that every publisher is different and everyone works slightly differently. It is not a one box fits all solution, the interface from one system to the other. So you need to make sure that you get what you need for your business and for your workflow, not because it's something that you're told this is how it works, or this is just how it is. You need to make sure that the interface is matching with your chosen workflow.
Lovely. Claire, we've got time just to squeeze in one more. Are you able to report on how contributions vary from year to year?
Yes, you can. Of course, if you're looking at year-on-year comparisons, though, you need the field in the database for a year in order to be able to do that. So you need to specify, again, it really does come down, a lot of this does come down to specification and knowing what you want, or being helped with identifying to know what you're going to need. So you need to identify what information it is you want to report on year, because you need to record that from day one within the system. So make sure you have that from day one, so that in 365 days, you can then report on it. Of course, if you have that information elsewhere, for example, I don't know, an Excel spreadsheet or another reporting system, you could import that information in, but please only do that if it's accurate, because you only want accurate information in your new central database. You don't want to be repeating inaccurate data. So providing it's accurate, it can be imported in, and you can do year-on-year comparisons right from day one. If not, you need to wait a year.
Fantastic. Claire, thank you so much. That was a really informative presentation. So thank you for today.
Thank
A
you.
recording of today's webinar will be available soon, and we will email you a link to it tomorrow afternoon. We will be publishing more information about forthcoming webinars shortly. If you're a supplier to the industry and are interested in discussing sponsorship opportunities around our Top Tips webinar program, then please get in touch with my colleague Martin Maynard. Until next time, thank you for listening and have a very good afternoon.